want us up there?
So everyone's muted at the minute as well. So. Where's the camera?
where's my what you call it? The cosmetics department.
You might want to mute for people to hear.
Okay.
I'll just mute it again when we start talking.
So good afternoon, everybody. Just to confirm, can you all hear us? Hello?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, very good. So we're going to commence, and just to advise you before we begin that we will be recording the session and it will be made available to you all afterwards. Okay?
Thank you. Okay, thanks.
So to begin, I'd just like to make the introduction. So I'm Patricia Tutty. I work in the International Education section, and we've had some previous dealings on the Government of Ireland programme. This is my colleague Jerry O'Sullivan, Head of International Education, and my colleague Stephen Vance, who will be working on the Government of Ireland programme going forward. So I'll just pass over to Jerry to say some words about the programme.
Hi, good morning, and thank you very much, or just good afternoon now. We've tried these webinars before, and they've worked very well, and I think they're a convenient way of meeting a large number and not imposing on you the challenge of travelling. So please interrupt. You have an opportunity at any time to type a question in the course of Patricia's presentation. If there's any issues that occur to you, if something you forget, of course, please come back later on to us. The model that we're imposing or putting in place for the Government of Ireland Academic Mobility Programme is not very strange. It's something we would have used a lot of, drawn heavily from European Union project reporting and payment conditions. And the system, I think, is fairly straightforward, but hopefully it will appear that way to you. But if you need to ask us anything, please ask the questions now, and then at the end of it we will record it or finish the recording and share it with you. So please, hopefully this goes well, and we ask as many questions as you feel you need to ask. Thanks. Hi Trish.
Okay,
back to you.
So we'll just begin. By now, all institutions should have received the terms and conditions of the programme. So just to run through the overview quickly again. So as you know, the duration of the funding runs from the 1st of December 2017 until the 31st of December 2018. So one of the conditions of the funding is that all of the mobilities will have taken place in that period. Then the next thing is the allocation of the funding. So as you know, again, the travel is economy only, and then there is also an amount for subsistence. Now we are allowing transfers between these two components if you feel that that's an appropriate thing. We would also, just to reiterate again, that if you do feel that the funding will not be used, that they must be returned to the HEI. And just by way of proof of travel, we'll need to see an airline ticket or a confirmation of the duration of the mobility at audit point, but we'll get to that in a moment. So we would ask you to hold all documents related to your mobility. So then just on the reporting obligations, so there will be 2 reports required to be submitted. The first is an interim report, and the date of submission, the deadline for that will be the 1st of June, and you'll receive contact from the HEA prior to that requesting submission of that report. And then to wrap up, there will be a final report at the end of the year on the 31st of December. And again, you'll be contacted in advance for that report. So the payments then, it will be 70% will be advanced for each award, and that will be made payable from us to each HEI. We asked several weeks ago for the submission of a bank account details form. We have received some, but not all, so we would just remind you as well to make sure that they're submitted, otherwise payment can't be made until that point. Yeah, so then just to go back to what I mentioned earlier on in terms of the monitoring and audit component. So we would ask that all documents relating to the mobility are held, and this can be includes but not limited to airline tickets and certificates of attendance. We will be contacting over the course of the year the participating institutions that are selected for monitoring. So at some point following interim report and before final report, that would be contact would be made with those HEIs. And then, so the next step in the process really will be the payments to be made to each of you, and then thereafter then the call for the interim report issued in the next coming months. So I think we can move now to our question and answer session. So our first question is from Ellen O'Connor in UCD in relation to the travel charges.
Can everybody see those questions?
Yeah. So. Okay, hi everybody. So just in terms of the, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, just give a shout there, please.
Yes.
So,
Okay.
Alan,
Yes.
you had a question in relation to the travel charges.
Just answer, I think.
Hello?
Can you hear us, Ellen?
Yes, I can hear you, yes.
No, go on.
Yeah, so Alan, your question was in relation to the travel charges.
Can everybody see the question?
Sorry, can everybody see the questions?
No.
We'll read the question to you then.
Mm-hmm. So Alan's question is, travel charges are being refunded as economy. How do you process refunds when flights taken are business? Will a quote charges suffice? So to answer that, economy only is permitted in this case.
But you can travel business if you wish, but your institution has to pick up the balance of the cost. The only the HEA will apply an economy rate to that when we're sorting out the amount of money that you have been given from us. So if you want to improve the quality of the flight ticket, it's at your expense.
Okay.
Okay, so next question is from Austin Coffey of Waterford Institute of Technology. Are transfers of funding for agreed work packages permissible?
Austin, could you be a little bit more clear as to what you mean there?
Yes, I just tried to clarify that there, Jerry. Thanks. Effectively, during the application process, I know in my own case, I listed a various number of work packages. Work package 1, which had details and outputs and metrics, hopefully associated with it. Work package 2, etc. Work package 3. And obviously there was an estimated cost attributed to each work package. Now, it's just kind of a small thing I would expect in the overall financial aspects. But for example, if work package 1 was estimated at X euro, work package 2 estimated at Y euro, and work package 1 actually came in less than the estimated one, but it could be predicted that the second work package could be more than the original estimate. I'm just wondering internally for budgets that have been received or have been identified, is it possible just to change from one agreed work package to the next?
It is, yes.
Yes, Austin, that would be permitted.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
How you, as I say, our only interest is well, sorry, it's not our only interest. We're interested in the learning and the work and the outcomes of the project as well, clearly. But if you want to shift the composition of your trip around different tasks that and still attain the overall objectives that you set, that's we won't be as rigid as getting into interfering with those kind of details. But your budget is the budget. So long as you don't go over it from our point of view, you can go over it. But as I mentioned, we will only fund up to the amount that we have indicated to you in our letter. But what you do, how you maneuver the thing, we appreciate entirely that these applications were made last year. When you start going down to actually doing the implementation, you may have to make adjustments like the type you have anticipated there. So you're free to do that, but keep the overall budget.
Very good. Thank you very much. That's been clarified. Thank you.
No bother. Thank you, Austin.
Okay, very good. So the next question is from Kevin Kelly of TCD. So just in relation to e-tickets being sufficient and not needing boarding cards. So the answer to that is yes, e-tickets will be fine.
Is that okay, Kelvin?
Yeah, that's okay, thanks.
Okay. Next question is another one there from Austin.
I think it's the same.
It's the same one,
Yeah.
Austin. Yeah, I
Yeah.
see.
So
Dermot.
Dermot, if the trip is completed prior to 1st of June, do we need to submit both interim and final report, or can we submit only final report by 1st of June? So you would...
It's a good question. We are allowing you, if you have a final report by
Ready.
June 1st, we won't ask you to submit it again. If everything is done by the 1st of June, and then that your interim report becomes your final report. So that's fine. If you have any money left over after completing your approved project, we will discuss the situation regarding refunds. I would to be able to say that you can keep the money and use it for something else, but unfortunately we can't. And any money that's left over unspent at the end of the year, again, we cannot carry it forward. It's a 1 year funded effort, and the department insists that we return money. We can't net it off, pardon, or add it to next year's allocation. We have to return it, unfortunately. So that was from Dermot. Thank you, Dermot.
Okay, so next question is from UCD Global Lounge. As this was the inaugural call for funding, do we envisage that there will be a further funding call for 2018? If so, do we have a timeline for this? The answer to that, Jerry, is yes?
Yes, we do anticipate there will be. The timeline we will hope will be earlier. What will happen probably post the June interim report, which will be the first real opportunity of getting a sector-wide picture of how things are going. We will review with the institutions, particularly through THEA and IUA and any other representative body out there. And indeed, we will take direct communication from the participants that we have by then. So we will take feedback in the middle of the year as to how the sector has seen the programme, and are they happy with the ways? There are any suggestions that could be usefully included in a new call? But short answer, yes, we're anticipating. This was committed to in the government's international strategy. I would think we will give you a quicker, a longer lead-in time this year for the coming 2019 period. I would think, again, you got your notification in December, which this year, so that was like the year was almost gone. I would expect we will be giving you a notice much sooner than that. Maybe not committing to October or November, but I would be thinking in the early part of the last quarter of the year. And the implementation year then will not be 1st of December this year. It will be 1 of January to 31st of December of 2019.
Okay.
Right.
So Rena Sheridan from TCD, can I ask a question on feedback for unsuccessful applications received today? Yes, you can, Rena.
Yeah, my question is whether the breakdown in scoring will also be provided alongside the verbal feedback we've received. It's very difficult to see what the individual section scores are and what the overall score was and what the threshold for a successful application would have been.
Well, at the moment, we're just issuing out the written feedback. It's not, as you know, it has quite rightly said, it's not scored. But we will be reviewing this in the coming weeks, and we will be in touch about that.
Okay, thanks, Patricia.
Okay.
In regards to a threshold, that you see, things in this being the inaugural year, we didn't quite know how many applications would be received because, as I said earlier on, we have been influenced by the model of project implementation that the European Commission does, because it's a model that the institutions are familiar with, and we are also, and one that I suppose is internationally understood. We didn't set a minimum threshold, which is quite often the case in European projects, so that like if you don't score higher than 60%, you're not even considered. That might well come in the 2019 call, because clearly with 124, I think, project applications, which resulted in just over 50 being approved, you know, there was a slightly less than 1 to 2 chance of you getting one, simply because of the demand. But a minimum threshold could well appear as one of the findings of our review and might well appear in next year's call. But given that you can see from the level of competition, it was extremely high. And I don't know whether the same level of competition will be there next year, because clearly a lot of people will be funded this year. But then there are a lot of unsuccessful people as well, and mostly due to, if we had more funding, more budget in our, and that's the second thing that we will be bringing to the attention of the Department of Education, that we had, what was the total amount required, requested? 1.6 million worth of applications, and we had 500,000 euro to spend. So we will be both looking at a threshold and increasing that budget, but that kind of call or that decision is outside our ability to say yes or no. But certainly within your own sector, and your two main ones, HEI and IUA, sit on the high-level group on international education. If you feel that it was not adequate enough, you know, please, you know, voice your opinion and express your point of view through those channels. Another question there.
Is that okay, Rena?
Hi, Rena.
Yes, that's fine. Sorry, I had my microphone off.
No problem, Rena.
Okay, thank you.
So the next question is Ellen O'Connor from UCD Innovation Academy. To clarify on the airline tickets for the reports, the tickets we have are business class. Can we submit the economy quote instead of the airline ticket? Do you want to answer that one, Jerry?
So again, Claudia, we have can we set the economy quote instead of? Yes.
Yes, okay.
Yes, because that is the figure that we will use to calculate what how much of the budget was spent on travel.
Yeah, thank you.
That's acceptable, Ellen.
That's perfect, thank you.
We would also we would probably hold on to the actual, even if you use business class travel, please hold the ticket, because that is proof that the person actually left, you know, on the days that you said they left. And, you know, we'll have to, and that's more from our auditing point of view. The CNAG will audit us, and they will ask us, how do you know that person X did actually travel to the country that they are supposed to? So we need proof of travel, and proof of duration would be from the host institution in the partner country.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, so our next question is from Kevin Kelly. Can you give any indication as to the expectation in terms of reporting? I'm assuming the work required will be proportional to the pretty small quantum of funding.
It's dangerous to assume that, Kevin.
To answer that, we wouldn't have the template prepared just quite yet, but it will be, I suppose, along the lines of what we would do under the Erasmus reporting to a smaller scale.
We appreciate. We are not going to add hugely to your workload, but the template will need to be sufficient to be able to state outline that actually the outcomes were achieved, that what we want to know, like, firstly, did the thing happen, and relative to what you had, the expectations that you had set for your mobility, were you happy, were you satisfied, were those achieved, and were there any other unanticipated maybe benefits or maybe unanticipated challenges that were not apparent when you made the application. So no, I don't think it'll be more than a few pages of return that you will need, but the type of thing that you might, common sense will prevail, I hope, in setting the reporting requirements.
Thanks for that.
Is that, can you hear, do you want to add a supplementary there, Kevin? Did you have another question? Your mic is very low.
If you want, do you want to try maybe typing?
Try typing it, Kevin, because we cannot. But if I wasn't heard by you again on the reporting requirements, we will not be setting a very onerous template, but we do need to know that the kind of aims and objectives that you would have set for yourself in the project that was concluded will be answered. So I can see 3 or 4 kind of categories maybe in the document, and it's up to yourself then how long or how much, but answer the thing in as much clarity as you can possibly. And what probably particularly will be in that, the criteria that you were selected under will influence and very much shape the reporting template, and issues regarding sustainability and how it goes. Well, like, one of the findings maybe in this review during the middle of the year was that you might like money for maybe a 2 to 3 year period that might make it more meaningful. You might also think that an outward bound mobility program isn't of itself is useful, but maybe there should be some dimension of inward bound mobility for your colleagues in the other partner institutions who may not have access to any other source of funding. So, we could shape this project in a very different way in the coming years, but it has to be led from the sector to reflect what it is that you need rather than what we feel is the way the project should go.
Okay, so we'll move on to our next question from UCD Global Lounge. If only part funded, how do you determine the minimum number of days one must spend in the host country?
Well, the number of days is set in your application. You've indicated to us the duration that you wish to spend in the country. So we will go back to your application form and judge it accordingly. And your application has been approved on the basis of certain days. We might have made some budgetary adjustments in the numbers of days, but that it will be no more than the number that you've indicated in your application. If you stay for longer, that's entirely, again, your wish, but anything over and above the minimum duration that we have approved is at your own institution's expense.
Okay. Ev, did you get that, Ev?
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I just wasn't clear because sometimes you might have pitched for example, 5 participants for 10 days each, and then you might have part funding, so it was hard to know what was covered in terms of what the minimum requirement in terms of the number of participants and the number of days. So we just need to make sure that people traveling are getting are meeting the minimum requirement.
Yeah, whatever you we had to cut budgets in order to make because of the demand being so high, and to try and increase the impact, but because it is primarily one of the key objectives of the international education strategy, the government strategy, is to improve sector performance, not just individual institutions, but to improve the whole sector. So to maximize this to the greatest extent, there was some changes made to duration and numbers. But the composition, if you put in for 5 people for 5 days, that's one way of looking at it and sending. But you can send 4 people for 6 days if you wish, or 7 days, whatever. We're not going to go down to that level of detail with you. So your budget is your budget. You can top it up with co-funding from yourselves, but you can also mix and match the numbers. Insofar, the objective is to facilitate you to do the mobility and achieve whatever goals you have set. And we leave the composition of the travelling team to you to make it that call.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, very good. So next question is Kevin Kelly. Funding received was less than I applied for, and I didn't receive feedback on the application, so I'm not sure on how to modify expectations plans for what I applied for. So that what Jerry has just answered to Ev would apply to you as well, Kevin. Did you get that okay, Kevin?
Yeah, I heard that. It's still not very clear to me.
Okay, well, I mean, we as I said, we had to trim the budget. If you looked for 12,000 and we gave you 10, well, it's up to you then to see how much of the objectives that you can realise with 10,000 that you had planned that you said you needed 12. Whether you get the 2,000 from your institution and reinstall the full team that you wish to carry out the mobility with, or whether you can cut back on the number of people or the number of days, that's an institutional call. It wouldn't be uncommon, like in European funding, for projects to have, say, 80% provided by the European Commission and the 20%, whether it's a contribution in kind or a contribution in finance or something else, to be provided by the beneficiary. That kind of mentality or that kind of model is in our head as well when these were made. Next year, depending on demand, people and the available funds, supposing the money is 500 again next year, maybe, and with a lower level of applications, if that was the way it fell, people might get closer to what they actually applied for. But unfortunately, as I said, that wasn't the case in last year. Well, fortunately, in one sense, it's very encouraging that there is that demand, and it means our argument for looking for more money is strengthened by the fact that we had a 3-to-1 budget application rate. And given that when people do these mobilities, and this idea is embedded in the sector, that it will generate more. But I think also, as a general point, people should also look at the European funding that we're making available. There's 1.7 million or thereabouts for different parts of the world under an action in Erasmus. It's not exactly like this, but it's not dissimilar as well. So I think when institutions are looking at sending teams of staff abroad, they could also usefully examine the Erasmus side to see if some of their aims can be met from that source. Another question there, I think, from Colm.
Next question, Colm, you wanted to clarify if claims will be made through each HEI initially before payment from the HEI is made. So the answer to that is at 70% payment for each awardee will be made by the HEI to each HEI on receipt of the bank account details form. So it's essentially a pre-financing payment.
So that would be the total amount. If an institution has been in total for different selected projects been offered, 50,000 euro, we will make 70% of that available on receipt or shortly after receipt of the bank account details from that institution. So you will get 70% of the money up front. And then 30% will come in the second half of the year after the interim report process has been concluded.
That's great. Thanks very much.
No bother, Colin.
Okay.
I mean, there are other processes I know you have to go through with your finance officer, but if you're looking for guidance, the 160 euro per diem is the same per diem that the European Commission offers under their program, which covers the rest of the world. It's called Key Action 107, and that's the title of the activity is International Credit Mobility. So that was a straightforward copy from there. If an institution, if that isn't adequate for the costs you're likely to incur, the balance again has to be met by the institution. So if you need 200, the top up has to be from your college. That again will be looked at next year. The European Commission hasn't changed its figures for this year for us, but it may well appear in the call for the next year. So, those are the kinds of feedback we need to hear from you during the year, that the daily allowance isn't adequate or is adequate. So, let test it out. But I say you can receive a top up from your college.
Okay. So do we have any more questions?
We will allow you if for example, you find that the price of your airline ticket that you projected at the application stage is lower, and so maybe then it frees up some money for you to bring more or stay longer. You can do that kind of thing as well.
So do we have any more questions from the audience?
It actually, just as a final point, it would suit us perfectly well if we did the less we have to seek reimbursement from you. Our cap is the amount that has been given to you in the allocation letter. But you can, if you more often than not, I suppose you'll be looking for a top up from your institution. But if you find that you're able to, you have met your minimum requirements set by you in the application, and you still have a few bob left over in the fund, my suggestion to you is, think of other ways of spending it, by augmenting your team or by staying longer. That is, but the only thing you cannot do in that space is add it onto the travel to have a business class ticket. It's the one limitation or stipulation that we have. We have, I suppose, how many have we got here? We have 25 attendees at this webinar, which is very helpful. As I said, the recording will hopefully reach more. But if anybody wants to follow up in the coming weeks, we're still here in the office. You have another two questions there.
So Karen McCarthy from ECC. Yes, Karen, the webinar has been recorded and it will be circulated around. And then Dermot Tormey, can any surplus resulting from cheaper flights be used to top up the per diem? Yes, we will permit transfer between the two categories.
We're going to maybe pull this, or if we haven't any more questions, they're beginning to run out.
Kevin, yes, economy is permitted. It is, yes.
Patricia, it's Mary Simpson in Athlone. I submitted 2 questions, but they don't seem to be appearing on the screen.
No problem, Mary. Do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, yes, please. So if the person who submitted the project and was successful is unable to travel, can we allocate the funding to a different person?
Yes, that's permitted, Mary.
And the second question is, can the funding, if you're buying your ticket to go to FABI and the HEISFI research event, can you then use the allocated funding towards your project at the partner university? The FABI and SFI HEA event is in April, so maybe the same person could carry out the project and attend the two events. Would that be acceptable?
Yeah, well, whatever else, you see, the minimum requirements that the institution has to meet are those set by yourself in the application. What other benefits you might accrue or engage with, or other activities you might do in that location is bonus. So we're looking. You will have to account for what you said in your application. What other work you do there is your business.
Okay, great. Thank you.
That isn't a HEISFI, it's just a HEA, IUA, THEA and IRC event. SFI it follows on, all right, just a small point, Mary. It follows on from an event that took place in 2015 that SFI funded, but SFI funding finished the year after that.